Before anyone tries to claim that, oh, this is a video all about hating on AI, I instead want to give a very level headed take on the actual state of what's going on right now within that entire industry, and then use video games as the spear, if you will, to pierce this giant whale known as AI to really figure out what's going on here, because, well, it's a lot. So don't consider this an anti-AI video or something else. I instead want to look at it critically, because there's good and there's bad in all of this. As you know, the AI boom has dominated headlines for years since there's been multi-billion-dollar investments given to the technology, and places like Silicon Valley going all in over this sort of technology. But this crazy tech is also being rallied by lofty promises of exponential growth. But today, a very different conversation is gaining steam that I want to talk about and see how it affects not just games, but really everything. You see, investors are now warning that the AI industry might be a bubble, one that could actually collapse under its own weight, because prices and valuations are simply unsustainable, and you'll see what I mean as you watch the video. The crux of where I want to start here is with the Washington Post, as seen here. Angry gamers are forcing studios to scrap or rethink new releases. The argument made by the Post is that whereas a lot of other industries are going all in on AI and believing that it is indeed the future, video game developers are not being as receptive to that technology apparently. As the Washington Post says here, as you can all see, the tidal wave of AI technology is not going over the way they believe that it would within games, mostly because consumers are not okay with the technology than really anything else. As seen here as well, AI is effectively being absorbed into all facets of technology and how things are being made. But video games are being seen as this last bastion of hope, if you will, when it comes to the actual technology. Now obviously, video games are also using AI technology too, but the point still stands that people are still pushing back. I'm not here to tell you that AI is bad in games. It's existed to some capacity within video games for years at this point already, so that would be hypocritical of me to say. To claim that AI has no place in video games would be to erase the last 25 years and then some of games that have already been made, well before the technology has even evolved to the point that it has now. Now with that all being said, this brings me to George Noble. He's considered a legendary investor in the world of finance, and he's currently declaring things that's got people sweating pretty hard. Here's what he said via Twitter. OpenAI is falling apart in real time. I've watched companies implode for decades. This one has all the warning signs. OpenAI declared code red in December. Sam Altman, that's the CEO of OpenAI, sent an internal memo telling employees to drop everything because Google's Gemini 3 is eating their lunch. Salesforce CEO Mark Benioff publicly ditched ChatGPT for Gemini after using it for only 2 hours. ChatGPT traffic fell in November, second month-over-month decline of 2025. Meanwhile, Gemini jumped to 650 million monthly active users. The company that was supposed to build AGI can't keep its chatbot competitive, but the real story is the money, he continues. OpenAI lost $12 billion in a single quarter according to Microsoft's own fiscal disclosures. Dutch Banks estimates about $143 billion in cumulative negative cash flow before the company turns profitable. Their analysts put it bluntly, no startup in history has operated with losses on anything approaching this scale. They're burning $15 million per day on Sora alone. $5 billion annually to generate copyright infringing memes. Even Sora's lead engineer admitted that the economics are currently completely unsustainable. Here's the big math problem that nobody wants to discuss. It's going to cost 5 times the energy and money to make these models 2 times better. The low-hanging fruit is gone. Noble then had more to say. The AI hype cycle is peaking. The diminishing returns are becoming impossible to hide. Competitors are catching up. The lawsuits are piling up. OpenAI needs to generate $200 billion in annual revenue by 2030 to justify their projections. That's 15 times growth in 5 years, while costs keep exploding. Even Sam Altman admitted investors are overexcited about AI. His exact words, someone is going to lose a phenomenal amount of money. If I were running an AI startup with good traction right now, I'd be looking for an exit, sell into the hype before the music stops. My positioning, I'm not touching OpenAI adjacent plays at these valuations. The risk profile is astronomical. Of course, many are pushing back against Noble and that stuff, but the general idea here is that these AI companies are operating at a loss. And without substantial levels of investment, things, well, they could get pretty dire. Does it mean that AI disappears forever? Probably not, no, but regardless, this doesn't mean that there won't be sweeping changes regardless. Like I said, I usually talk video games on this channel, but since these things affect the industry of the sort of content I report and enjoy myself, yeah, it's a problem for sure. As we got this from Tom's Hardware, which reads, OpenAI could reportedly run out of cash by mid-2027. Analyst paints grim picture after examining the company's finances. As they report here, as you can see, OpenAI ran through $8 billion in 2025, and the cost will rise to $40 billion by 2028. Obviously, even if you're bad at math like me, these numbers, they're kind of a nightmare. OpenAI is projecting, however, to have their projects for data centers to support AI to reach somewhere in the $1.4 trillion bracket, which is an insane amount of money. That's like, what, maybe more than double what Elon Musk is valued at right now or something, I think? But as some analyst groups are reporting as seen here, with the best optimistic outlook on AI currently, it will still allegedly lead to at least $800 billion in losses in the next few years alone. In terms of game creators, the fear of AI comes more so from a place of social pushback really than anything else. As one developer said to the Washington Post as seen here, they state that their entire career could be over in an hour by claiming that they love and want more AI in their games. But personally, I think it's getting overblown in some ways because every game to some capacity is using that technology already. Other companies aren't really afraid at all when it comes to adopting AI as their entire operation. I mean, go look at Krafton. That's the South Korean publisher that owns games like PUBG, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and Subnautica, just to name a few. As GameRant reported here back in November 2025, Krafton has already been buying out employee contracts to enforce their entire operation as AI first going forward. The gist of what Krafton is doing pretty much is they want to reduce their workforce and effectively replace all their workers with AI going forward. So the move that they're making is they are buying out their employee contracts to then make them quit. If an employee has worked there for about a year or so, they're eligible for up to 6 months of severance pay upfront. If other employees have been working at Krafton for 11 years or more, they can collect upwards of 3 years worth of payments upfront to just leave the company right now. As CEO Kim Chang-han said about this push for Krafton to go all in on AI, this is what he said: Krafton will automate work centered on agentic AI and fully implement an AI-centered management system. So they are positioning themselves to be a publisher where their workforce essentially never has to be paid even a single dollar in the future for any of their work. Because they're robots, obviously, and these workers can then code and create their games theoretically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to increase productivity forever. Obviously, to some capacity, Krafton will still keep some human employees to take what is made by this AI, and then ensure that it works to be made into an actual game. But while some may think this is crazy and a bad idea, like I said, it's being normalized quite quickly. As seen here too, Krafton is investing about $69 million in American currency to create their data infrastructure to support these AI devs basically going forward. As I said there, it's all to support multi-stage tasks requiring sophisticated reasoning and iterative planning, so the developers will cease to exist at Krafton with their future games, in theory anyways. Krafton claims that they're on track to create their company into an AI-first structure by the second half of 2026, which, yeah, that isn't far away, obviously. So that's really going to be wild if they can just, implement that so quickly. But Krafton also claims that they want to abolish their human resources department almost entirely as well, to then use that added budget and time to further enforce the AI culture within their studios instead. This will apparently increase the role expansions within the company and allow for faster product development. But obviously, as we saw from George Noble and more recently, if the bubble then bursts, then Krafton's plans could be annihilated well before they would have liked it to, I guess. But you may be then thinking, well, this is kind of terrible, and surely Krafton as a publisher is cratering in profits, right? But it's actually the opposite. By the end of 2025, they actually reported record-breaking profits. Around $717 million American was made in profits by Krafton just at the end of 2025. And again, if you eliminate pretty much all your employees, besides the few you need, I guess, to oversee things, then that money doesn't need to be shared anymore really at all. It just gets funneled into the pockets of the few actual human workers there, while the workforce making the games for players is quite literally being paid nothing because, well, they're not human, they're AI. Inzoi, that's another game made by Krafton, came out in early 2025, but the heavy use of AI was received so negatively by the player population that, as GameRant reported here, Krafton lost almost all their players from early access, and it hasn't recovered since. It launched with around 87,000 players on Steam alone. Inzoi was then down to 4,000 a week after their initial launch. Inzoi, in case you don't know, is sort of like The Sims, but, Krafton's version so they don't get sued by EA. I decided to look up Inzoi on Steam right now to see where it's at, and look at this, man. It's down to 2,000 or so players right now. It never recovered from that initial burst of interest because of its use of AI. So obviously it's not all working for Krafton, but again, they still made record profits, so that money is coming from somewhere. Probably PUBG and Subnautica if I had to guess, but even then. If they are making enough money now to buy out these employee contracts outright, this means that Krafton is so confident in this future, they'd rather get rid of their actual veteran devs for AI instead. Who knows, maybe Krafton used AI to train it with the works of these veteran devs already so they can have the same style and workflow of those developers without having to pay them in the future. But the reality is that AI can really only pull from what already exists, so technically nothing new could be made by it in theory. Which means if Krafton's efforts plateau, they're never going to make anything that's actually new because by definition, the AI can't do that. But maybe they don't care. The point is just to make content in general, but I guess we'll see. I'll ask you guys, do you think this is a good idea of Krafton to do? Are you willing to buy games made by non-human hands, or do you not care? Let me know in the comments. But like I said, it's not the same everywhere. Running with Scissors, that's another development studio, said that they axed something that they were making due to the use of AI. As they say here from the Washington Post, their initial concerns allowed us to kill a project, they mean their fans, that would have done irreparable damage to our brand. So it's clear that the way that AI is being viewed is completely different depending on who you pretty much ask. The Washington Post does make a good point that gamers in general as a group have a far bigger influence in how things get made or distributed in their niche over that of others. It's because gamers are just, more passionate about what they consume. They actually care. And if they didn't, you wouldn't get the massive backlash that you do when things go wrong all the time, right? But that being said, I don't think the use of AI will evaporate overnight in games because, again, it's always been there. It's sort of like a sword. Sure, it can hurt someone, but it can also be used to help others and cut things free too. AI is, after all, only a tool in the end. It mostly depends on the person utilizing it. Unfortunately, a lot of people are idiots and tend to use it for dumb reasons. Either way, this is leading to insane price gouging. As seen here from Tom's Hardware, again, SSDs or solid-state drives are practically sold out completely and supply is cooked until at least 2027. All of this is because of RAM, which is used to obviously power AI data centers. And look at the price comparison from 2025 to 26 right now. Everything has ballooned, and that's just going to keep going up too. The suppliers for these SSDs have just flat out stated that they can't meet demand anymore. It's instead impossible due to shortages of chips and the demand of AI data centers everywhere. It's not only that though. As Micron said there, DRAM won't be available until at least 2028 due to AI demands either. If you don't know what that stands for, it's dynamic random access memory for short. It's like a semiconductor that stores data so the computer within a device can access it faster. Everything has this, by the way, your phone, laptop, all of it. Anyway, yeah, that is also cooked till 2028 pretty much because AI bought everything up again. Micron CEO also tried to settle fears that they were leaving normal people behind in favor of big corporations, but that's kind of what is happening regardless. Unless you're a millionaire or a billionaire, you're probably not going to be able to get your hands on new technology for a while now, and it is what it is. Again, from Tom's Hardware, they also reported recently that data centers for AI will be consuming upwards of 70% of all memory chips in 2026 already. As they say below that, soon you might not even be able to buy a calculator due to these shortages. So if you got a phone, which you probably do, hold on to that thing for dear life, guys. Treat it like it's your holy grail. Otherwise, you could be screwed in these shortages. But as Tom's Hardware says here pretty much with their sources, the demand of RAM and how AI is affecting it will crush everything trying to get more of it, but that is the craziest time ever, as they said there at the end for this sort of thing too. Which makes me wonder how Krafton will actualize their reality on AI developers when Micron and more are all being forced to sell their stock to these mega big companies that are hundreds of times the size of Krafton and then some instead. Like, what happens if your chips then get cooked and now you theoretically don't have any workers? Then you're really screwed. But like George Noble said earlier, right? This could all blow up in these companies' faces, I guess. If the absolute state of AI is this expensive and AI is absolutely something that these companies are implementing come hell or high water, then there's really only two directions that they can go. If George Noble is right like he has been in the past, we're about to see the biggest crash in the tech industry like we've never seen before. Or, and this is the other option, things get better and it reaches new heights instead. But if places like OpenAI run out of cash like it was reported earlier in the video by 2027, well, what happens then? These AI guys need their data centers. You can't just run those centers on nothing. You need money and power to keep them afloat. Again, from Tom's Hardware, my god, dude, so much of them today in this video, but I swear it wasn't on purpose. But anyways, they say that the biggest problem is that AI in general is eating away more than it's giving back to these companies. Sam Altman of OpenAI, however, has danced with the idea of adding ads and more to things like ChatGPT in order to generate income for the company to keep powering ChatGPT in the future. But if that happens, people will just switch to Gemini or another, service, I guess, that doesn't do that. Already on YouTube, for example, the algorithm is completely cooked these days already as well. And that's really all due to the AI moderation and the content pretty much. I kind of miss how things were back in early 2022 or even 2023 when it came to this sort of stuff. It wasn't nearly as prevalent. It wasn't the future then. People still had to formulate their own thoughts. But now there's so many people using it for content creation from games, movies, even YouTube videos, dude, or just like I showed you, entire game publishers. Now wanting to basically have game development studios that never have a sick day, they never have to sleep, and they never complain either. Just produce forever around the clock. Now again, I'm not against AI or anything, okay? The point stands that like most things in the world, eventually and inevitably, there will always those who will take something way too far. Look at AI content on YouTube as a great example. Originally, it was okay, maybe a funny meme video or something or a trailer. Now you got entire channels with tens of thousands of videos that are flooding the YouTube space daily. It's unsustainable. It's killing the actual human creators who make their own content like I do. Instead, some guy is hitting prompts and producing like 15 videos a day by stealing the scripts and ways of talking from whatever YouTuber he wants by using AI or something else. That to me is bad. I do hate that. YouTube Shorts are also just flooded with AI slop too, yet YouTube still refuses to fix any of this because it still makes the money. I'm not complaining here per se. I'm just saying that things could be, less dystopian. You know what I mean? While sure, massive capital expenditures seem like a good idea from AI infrastructure to these data centers and God knows where they're located, this is still all being financed with cheap money in the long run. And what it's doing is leaning heavily into investor optimism over everything else. In some cases, revenue from these ventures doesn't even come close to justifying the costs that they have, like I showed you earlier too. As NDTV.com said in October 2025, the MIT study they referenced for the article showed that around 95% of enterprise AI projects have actually failed to yield any ROI or return on investment for short, meaning much of the money poured into AI is actually not translating into profits, and that cannot be denied. It just is what it is. Which then leads me to ask this question, which may sound weird to some to say, but are we as a people, like as a society, really ready to adopt such technology that is so clearly not being implemented in a safe enough manner that makes sense yet? It's like giving a caveman a rocket launcher, you know what I mean? Like, it's probably a bad idea to give a guy who doesn't even know what electricity is a rocket that will definitely blow him or his family up when he shoots it wrong. Yet here we have all of these AI projects failing. The economics don't make any sense, and some companies like Krafton are headstrong on leading the charge no matter what. But maybe we're just not really ready yet, It's not to say, no, it's bad, abolish it forever. But I do think we really need to ask the question if it's not just something we should be giving such easy access to is really the point here. We got kids these days who can't write essays now due to ChatGPT because they're too stupid. We got people dating AI companions. And scammers that are throwing together scripts in like 2 minutes on Gemini and then flooding YouTube with AI content at a pace that no real human can reasonably compete with. We really do need to have the conversation that maybe we're just not ready for this technology yet. Like I said, it's making people dumber, less reliant on their own thoughts, and they're actually turning people into NPCs. Again, it's not all bad, but there are aspects of it that aren't great either. Can we agree on that? Like, that cannot be denied. I already know that some people will disagree with me on this, but it still needs to be discussed, and that's okay. But what do you guys think about all of this? Let me know as always in the comments, because there is a conversation to be had here, honestly, about this sort of thing. If the rising cost of electricity and data chips and computer resources in general for AI could then create a bottleneck in the future, we really need to ask ourselves what is going to happen if this so-called expected revenue doesn't materialize the way that these companies have originally envisioned. What all of these problems combine to form is a classic thing where the prices and the valuations are being driven more by future promises from these companies than actual current expectations that they can reasonably reach in the timeframes that have been given. But it's really important to remember that AI is not mere hype really or something else. Instead, it's about what it can promise us as a people in the future too, from the ways it can fix the automation or the optimization and the data insight tools that do deliver value in many industries already. Which is why I won't say that AI has no place in games, because again, it's been there since before you were probably even born. The debate here instead is about the scale and the sustainability, not the usefulness of the technology itself. Yeah, AI is useful. I get that. But is it really that reliable, so to speak? Is it really even worth as well how much it needs to be sacrificed to keep it is my question. I think this is enough for one video. Let me know if you want to see more stuff like this from me, but hopefully people have heard me out enough to understand I'm not saying that I hate AI forever or anything like that. I just think we need to have real adult conversations that maybe there are things that need to be fixed before long, you know? But as always, thank you for being here. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next one.